Jian with me here today, and we both have short stories published in the Voices of the Future anthology. Hope, thank you for being with me here on my channel today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome, I'm excited too. So, the first question that I have for you today to get things started off is what is the first thing you want people to know about you as an author?
So, I think I'd like people to know that I'm an author that's passionate about acknowledging invisible struggles like chronic illness, mental health, and trauma, but retaining a core of hope and wonder. I'm also the kind of person who wants to walk beside my reader um, and offer encouragement and that compassion and hope while they journey through the story.
Yeah, that's awesome. And a question that sort of goes along with this, I think that also makes a good introduction. A question that came in from the audience is, in your opinion, what are the best and worst parts of writing?
Okay, so I think in some ways you could say that almost any parts of writing can sometimes be the best or the worst, just
Yeah, that's
depending on where
true.
you are, because sometimes it's just not great and other times it's amazing. But I think for me, the worst part might be drafting, maybe. I used to think I really liked drafting, but I've been writing a couple stories now, and I think I realized, yeah, actually, I think drafting is a lot more of like a slog for me. So, I think that's more of the worst part of kind of writing for me as far as that, like, process. And then probably for the best part is, I'd say the idea stage, which I think maybe a lot of people can relate to, or at least writers, because you have so much exploration going on and just trying different things, flipping, like, tropes on their head, and just being able to just unleash your creativity. So that's probably, like, the best part of writing for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the idea stage is definitely the most fun. There's the writing meme that's something to do with, I do a lot more thinking about writing than actually writing. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that is the most fun part of writing is thinking about the stories, and then you actually have to write them and it's hard, but then it's
Yeah.
it's also great once you finish it and have that sense of accomplishment. More people are coming in. If you're just coming in, we're talking to Hope Jian right now. We will also later be talking with Rachel Elizabeth. And unfortunately, Amie Woleslagle is not able to join us today. She got sick last week when we were trying to talk to Valerie Western, Madigan Thompson, and Cara Peregrino. Cara was sick. So thankfully, Cara is able to join us today. She is feeling better now. But now Amie is sick. So we may have to have another anthology author interview so that we can talk to Amie. But we do have three anthology authors to talk to here today. All four of us, all five, six of us, everybody that I just mentioned has a short story published in the Voices of the Future anthology from the Author Conservatory. And if you don't have your copy of the anthology yet, there is a link to it in the description. And we are using these books to raise funds to go to writers' conferences. So if you would like to support us in going to writers' conferences, then grab your copy in the description. So my next question is, what was the main that's not my next question. That's the question after my next question. My next question is, what is your story Shattered Echoes about?
Okay, so my story is about this boy who has 24 hours to rescue his father and return things to the way they were before the portal in his basement collapses. And he loses not only his father, but his world, or so his father's voice claims.
Ooh, ooh, I haven't heard that summary before, so I like that summary a lot.
Thank you.
And what was the main inspiration for this story?
So when I was doing the short story, I think I pulled from this little idea that I had tucked away for literally a couple years. That was just about this guy who literally had a portal in his basement. And I think in the very original like idea for that, it was like, oh, he was the guardian, which kind of ties into the story. Um, but it was like supposed to be for like a flash fiction piece or something. I just managed to just stick it on a sticky note on my wall for all those years. And then when I had to, or when I was working on short story ideas, I was like, "Hey, why not? This is like a really kind of like smaller idea." And so I kind of went off of that.
Yeah, that's great. It's so fun when you can actually bring back a story idea that you had a long time ago and didn't get to write, and
Yeah.
when that story actually works out. That's a lot of fun. Um, um, were there any books that particularly inspired your short story? This is another question that the audience asked.
Yeah, I feel bad, but I'd say kind of no. I feel like inspiration for Shattered Echoes wasn't like, as far as, like, compared to other books or stories, I feel like there isn't a lot of, like, "Oh, and this is where I got my inspiration from."
Yep. Yep, that's how it goes. Some story ideas were very much inspired by other books for me, and some of them not at all. So, yeah, totally makes sense. We'll talk more about other books in a minute. Um, so who is your story for? Who is the ideal target reader for Shattered Echoes?
Yeah, so I'd say that my story is for people who enjoy these brother bonds and fantasy that's, like, grounded in the familiar, but it still has magical elements to it. Definitely also for people who have struggled with difficult life changes, and you want to read a story that's honest about the difficulties and the brokenness of life, but remaining hopeful and touched with the magical.
Yeah, yeah, I like how you mentioned the grounded feel of the story. That was one of my favorite things about Shattered Echoes, that even though it has this magic portal, the house just felt like so real to me. I felt like it was my house.
I'm so
I
glad.
don't know how similar it actually is to my house in your mind, but like I felt like I've been in this house. I know this house. So to then have a magic portal in it was like so much fun because of course I've always wanted a magic portal in my house. Who hasn't? Of course, it can be dangerous having a magic portal in your house,
Yes, you can.
as the story points out, but it does make for a cool story anyway. So, how does your story fit into the family theme?
So I think it would fit in there because if you read the story, you see a lot of family focus. The main character, Cole, is desperate to get his father back. And because of that desire, he clashes a lot with the rest of his family. He clashes with his grandmother, his brother, and his mom. But in the end, Cole makes a decision, or Cole's ability to make the decisions that he does make in the end are because of the love and support of his family.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you have an adopted sibling in your story too, because we have a lot of biological family in the anthology. We have some found family in the anthology, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Cole's brother is the only like legally adopted family in the anthology. So I'm glad we have an adopted sibling. That was really fun. So what are some books or movies or songs or shows or whatever that you would compare your story to? Like, if you're a fan of this thing, then you'll be a fan of Shattered Echoes.
Mhm. Okay, so I felt like you kind of hit a little bit more of a weaker spot for me because comparison and like comparable titles. But I think one of the strongest comparisons I can make with Shattered Echoes and something else would be Pixar's Onward. I feel like you kind of hit
Mhm.
some of the same plot threads in some ways of these. Well, in Onward, you have two brothers who are looking to kind of see their father again, and you have Cole who wants to see his dad again too. And it also has, that touch of magicalness. Though Onward, you have a very like completely magical world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense as a comparison, like onward, but even more like real world groundedness. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's a good comparison. Now we're ready for the hard question that I'm always like, I don't know where you guys are going to take this, but Valerie and Madigan both did a great job with this, and I think it's such an interesting thing to talk about. How do you hope your writing will impact the future of storytelling?
Yeah, that you're right when that is like a hard question. When you sent that out, I was like, "Oh man. Oh man." But I think, outside of, my desires for the anthology because I think a lot of us want to inspire other young writers to keep writing and to pursue their dreams and remind them of the power of story. I think more on the general side, outside of that, I would hope that my writing helps kind of keep the flame of original and deep storytelling alive and strong. There's a lot of stories in, just present media and that tends to fall flat and feel kind of
Mhm.
hollow. You have like a lot of remakes, like people are just remaking a bunch of the old stories and you don't have like a lot of fresh ones. Or if you do have fresh ones, they're like really tropey or they're just not really leaning on strong storytelling and things. So I yeah, I wanna help fight against that, and I hope that my writing helps keep s original storytelling strong.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're all feeling that hollowness of so much of modern storytelling and really looking forward to younger writers going back to the roots and fundamentals of storytelling and giving us some new original stories. Yeah, I think we're all excited for that and looking forward to that. And I think that that's a good answer. I keep asking this question because people keep giving good answers, even though it's such a hard question. And I do think it's a really interesting topic to talk about.
It is.
Yeah, we have
Definitely
one
kudos
more.
to you.
Well, thank you. We have one more audience question that was sent in ahead of time, and soon we will be ready to take live questions. So if you guys watching live have any questions for Hope, go ahead and put your questions in the chat. And while you work on that, I will ask this previously sent in audience question. What is next on your author journey?
Okay, so I'd say that next on my author journey is actually looking for an agent and or publisher. So, as a third year student, it's the third year in the author conservatory is very heavily focused on prepping to pitch to industry professionals, and that's what I'm currently doing. Outside of that, I'm just continuing to try to grow my stories, continuing to try to get the anthology into readers' hands, and also sustaining my learning journey by building and expanding on my own businesses as an entrepreneur.
Awesome. And Hope, where can people find you online? If they want to follow you and your stories, where should people go for that?
Yeah, so I am mainly on Instagram under Hope Jian Author, um, and I'm also on Facebook, which I believe is also under Hope Jian. And I also have an email list that you can also access through those links in the profiles.
Sounds good. Yeah, if you want to put links to any of those in the chat, once you get off, you're welcome to do that if you can. And I can also put those links in the description when I post the replay of this video to make sure that people can find you online and follow your stories. We have a question from Cara. She asks, "What was your favorite thing about Shattered Echoes?"
Hmm. And I have to think about that for a moment. Hmm. It's a really good question, Cara. I was not prepared for that.
Uh-huh.
I think maybe one of my favorite things is I mean, I don't know if that sounds simple or basic, but like the family aspects, particularly between Cole and his brother. I really enjoy reading about brother bonds, so it was fun to write about Cole and Jason. And even though they clash, that they still have that bond and love for each other.
Yeah, yeah, that was one of my favorite things about it too, and it's you see kind of the trope of just siblings fighting with each other, just being mad at each other, and so I like that even though there is conflict between Cole and Jason, that there's also reconciliation and just always that core of they really do have a good relationship with each other, even when that's hard. Hannah Abigail asks, "What was the hardest part of writing Shattered Echoes?"
I think. maybe it was trying not to make it expand over the limits of writing a short story, um, because I like to write long to an extent, and also just I tend to write more overcomplicated things. So it was kind of like, oh, well, there's so much more in some ways that could be explored, but like just trying to keep it um, small enough in that circle, um, and also making it satisfying in the end too.
Yep. Yep. I tend to be a long, complicated story kind of writer too, so I completely relate to that. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, Hope, thank you so much for joining me today. And do you have any last thoughts before I kick you off and bring on Rachel?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. It was great to answer these questions and talk to you, and also just interact with the people here. It's been a really great blessing. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yep. It's been great to have you. And now I will kick you off the live stream. See you later, Hope.
See ya.
See ya. Okay. Rachel will be joining us in just a second. Let me see if she needs any help getting in. This may be where we have technology snafus. Do any of you have questions for Rachel that you already know you have? I'm sure you'll have more after you hear her. But if you have questions for her already that you know that you're going to want to ask, then go ahead and put those in the chat so that we will be all ready. How are you guys doing today? Is anybody reading any good books right now? Does anybody have anything fun on your TBR pile? Oh, that's a good question, Cara. If I forget to ask Rachel that, remind me. Um, I will make a note of that actually, so that I will not forget. Cara asks, you normally write YA, so what made you want to write a much older main character this time? That is a good question. Sarah Grace has another good question. She asks, "What was your favorite part of writing the story?" That is always a fun question to ask authors. I don't see Rachel's request to join yet. Cara, are you ready to join? Because you can go ahead and join and we can talk to you while Rachel figures out her link if that would work for you. Okay, I think we'll have Cara joining us first. So that will work out. And we have some extra questions ready to go for Rachel. So that's great. And I forgot while Hope was talking, I was going to show you Shattered Echoes title page within the Voices of the Future anthology. And I can go ahead and show you also the title page for Kara's story, The Penny Dragon, in the Voices of the Future anthology, which don't forget, if you don't have your copy of the anthology yet and you would like to support young writers by helping us go to writers conferences, then you can find a link to this in the description of the video. And don't forget to like and subscribe this video if you would like to hear more about the Voices of the future of storytelling, the anthology, and just books in general. Hopefully the link will work for Kara. That's okay, Hope. Hope said she forgot to bring a book with her. That's okay. You guys can see it again if you want to. I almost forgot to bring it. I was grabbing it at the last second before we got on the live. Oh, here we go. Kara!
Hi, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that it only works on mobile, so I had to go and install the app.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
but yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I did the same thing when I was on Amy's Instagram live. I was like, oh, you have to use a phone for this. I didn't know. I love your author conservatory hoodie.
It was
Good
that or
choice.
the dress with the dragons on it, and I thought I'll do the author conservatory.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we would enjoy anything with dragons on it also. So, Cara, now that you're finally able to join us, I'm glad that you could be here today. What is the first thing you want people to know about you as an author?
So I was thinking about this, and I was like, the first thing I want people to know about my writing is that like it's safe for your kids. So I write middle grades, and I know that there's like a lot out there at the moment that's kind of a bit sketchy or like you're having to vet everything. And my books are basically not like that. I'm sure everybody says that. The one thing I want you to know from my writing is that growing up does not mean leaving wonder behind. So that's kind of like a really
Mm,
strong theme in a lot of my stories.
yeah, I love that. And can you go ahead and tell us where you're from in case anybody doesn't know? Because we all love hearing about where you're from.
I am from Scotland, but I have like a little bit of an American twang because my husband is American. So
We're corrupting you. I'm sorry, Cara.
I live in fear that one day I'll lose my accent, but it's fine.
That would be terrible. You have to like keep listening to recordings of Scottish people to make sure that you don't have your accent dimmed by having an American husband. So, in your opinion, what are the best and worst parts of writing?
This is like a really hard question. I think I agree with Hope that like different bits are really easy and really difficult. And I think honestly, like it varies from book to book. Like sometimes like you write one book and you're like, oh, um, the characters are coming so easy. They're like old friends. Like I feel like I've known them my whole life. And then you write another book and you're like, they're not talking to me and they refuse to talk to me. It's not working. So I think my favorite parts are usually like the first draft because it's just so fun to explore and like it's this new world and it's all fresh. My least favorite part is probably editing, but but it can be fun as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think there is a consensus that like the early free imaginative stages are the most fun and then later it's a lot more work. But yeah, but we're glad that you did the editing work to bring the Penny Dragon into the world. So speaking of the Penny Dragon, what is this story about?
It's about a wee old lady who, to be fair, is losing the plot, and she becomes convinced that there's a dragon. No, a mouse running around her house. She hears a scratching in the walls, and she's like, "There's a mouse." She becomes a bit obsessed with catching this mouse, and her son does not believe her. And in the end, she's vindicated. He's right. It's not a mouse, but she's also right. There is a small creature living in her house.
Yes. And this isn't one of the questions I told you to prepare for. I'm sorry, but it's very interesting that you write middle grade, but this story is about a little old lady. So why a little old lady when you usually write middle grade?
She was just the right voice for it. So I thought about doing it from there's a girl in it called Nushka, and I thought about writing from her perspective, um, but it just wouldn't have worked any other way, I don't think.
Yep, I agree. And I know that the little old lady is most people's favorite part about it, especially people who have cared for aging parents. I hear from
Mm.
them all the time that they really love reading about Banka. So, this is a little bit similar to what I already asked, but what was the main inspiration for your story?
So I don't know if you've ever seen it on Pinterest, that little cartoon with the dragon, and he like steals the coin, and then he disappears down the back of the sofa, and then it's like, oh, it's a tiny dragon that steals coins. That was basically the inspiration. But also, I worked in dementia care for some time, so I was kind of like familiar with older people. And originally, she wasn't going to have dementia, um, but yeah, that's just how it ended up.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to that audience question that we got previously, were there any books that inspired your short story, or was it mostly just the real life experience and the cartoon with the tiny dragon?
It was mostly the cartoon and the real life experience.
Yeah. Who is your story for? Who is your target reader or audience?
So although I write middle grade, I guess this story isn't really like for middle grade people. It's for the people who have that experience of having like older relatives who they have to look after, but they just don't want to be looked after. Um, because in the end, really the story's not actually about Benka, it's about Nushka and Samuel and what they're going through, even though it's from her perspective. So it's for those people because you don't see a lot of that in fiction. You do see a lot of family struggles, but they're often kind of centered around siblings or like the parent-child dynamic rather than kind of caring for older people.
Yeah, for sure. That's not something that is portrayed a lot, and it's an experience that a lot of people have. So I do think that's a really cool thing about your story. And I also think it's cool just the multi-generational aspect of your middle grade writing and how Anushka is more in a middle grade like range, but then also her dad and her dad's mom and just the wide range of life experience there is really cool. And kind of building right off of that, how does your story fit into the family theme?
Uh, a lot of us do have like multi-generational families, and um, often how it works is you're looked after by your parents, and then you have children, and you look after your children, and then you end up looking after your parents. That's the common way of life just progressing. But sometimes you get caught in this middle part where you're looking after the elderly people when you're younger, and that's really hard. So it fits into the family theme of like loving your family when they really don't make it easy, and looking after them and trying to look after them when they don't want to be looked after. So it's kind of that sometimes your family try and push you away, but you have that responsibility, or you feel that kind of like because you love them, you want what's best for them, and you have to navigate this weird space of trying to look after them without letting them know that they're being looked after.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that my family has some experience with my grandparents. So yeah, I'm glad that you represented that in your story because yeah, like we were talking about, that's not something that we see a lot of. And since that is something that we don't see a lot of, are there any books or movies or songs or shows or anything that you would compare your book to, or say if you're a fan of this, you'll be a fan of my book?
Hmm. That is hard. I did read like a number of years ago now a murder mystery called Elizabeth is Missing. And I loved that book because it was from the perspective of this little old lady and she has dementia. And half the time she just has no clue what's going on, but she's trying to solve this mystery. So she thinks her friend Elizabeth has disappeared, but then she becomes obsessed with solving her sister's disappearance, which is like 60 years ago, and she ends up solving it. Um, but it's from a similar perspective. But I also didn't want it to be too similar to that. But there's also a song, and I can't remember who it's by, but it's called Unraveling, and it's from the perspective of a granddaughter who is like looking after her grandmother and watching her as she kind of unravels, basically.
Yeah, Yeah, those both sound really interesting. Valerie's asking, what's the title of the book again? Do you know the author off the top of your head too?
Uh, oh, uh, Elizabeth is Missing, and it's by Emma Healy.
Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy. Awesome. Yeah, I'll want to look that up too. So, the hard question. How do you hope your writing will impact the future of storytelling?
Gonna be cheeky and say that I don't actually care. Um, I care how it impacts the reader themselves. Like, it's okay if in 20 years people just forget my books, but I want the people who do read them to like feel less alone in their struggles and to feel more kind of like, especially as middle grade, I want like younger people to feel a bit more equipped to deal with some of the challenges and some of the things that they're going to face in the real world, but to kind of learn how to deal with that in a safer fictional environment, basically.
Mm, yeah, that's great. And to finish off with our final previously sent in audience question, if any of you watching have questions for Cara, go ahead and type them in the chat while she answers this one. This is our last previously determined question. And it is, what is next on your author journey, if you know?
Next, I get to send you my trash child and you get to read it.
It's not going to be a trash pile. We are going to have a wonderful time being critique partners.
Yes, Danny is my critique partner. I was supposed to send her a book today to read over, and then I will polish that up, get it sent to an editor, and I'm hoping to pitch it in the next year or so.
Yep.
So that's the
And
short-term plan.
yes, I feel like my book is a flaming mess right now too, if it makes you feel any better. So that's why we need critique partners.
I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to start your book.
Yes, it'll be fun.
Mhm.
Okay, Hope asks, would you do any other different family dynamics?
Yes. So my book that Jenny's gonna get is about a little girl who is really struggling with the concept that her family might have to sell up their home and leave the only place she's ever um, lived in. So there's that kind of like trusting your parents to make good decisions, but also like really struggling with change. I've got another book I'm working on where the boy actually is in the process of being adopted, and there's kind of this dynamic with the guy who's going to adopt him, um, kind of learning to be part of a family when he's never been part of one before.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Those sound like a part of the same brand that we saw in the Penny Dragon, but also each one distinct. So that's fun. Does anybody else have more questions for Cara before I kick her out and we bring on Rachel? Cara, where can people find you online?
So I have a website which has a newsletter on it. So it's caraperegrino.com. And then I have Instagram, which is Cara Peregrino Writes.
Awesome. And again, if you can and you want to, you can put those links in the chat. And otherwise, I will grab them for the description when I post the replay. Anything else that you wanted to say before I kick you out?
Only that if you're a young reader, keep reading. And if you're a young writer, then you can do this. Just keep going. So, yeah. And thanks for having us and for doing this, Jenny.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been great to have you. Hope says that there will be a reckoning for all this kicking out, so I'm a little worried now. I feel like now I'm going to get kicked out of something at some point. But until then, I will go ahead and kick you out, Cara. But thank you so much for coming. I'm glad you're not sick now and that you could come this week.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Okay, Rachel, are you able to join us now? Let's see if Rachel is able to come. Okay, looks like Rachel might be able to do it now. Let's see. Drum roll. Keep drum rolling. Here we go. Rachel, you
I'm
made it.
here.
You're here. I'm glad you're here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I apologize for earlier. I didn't know you had to be on a mobile device. So I'm like on my laptop, have my link, I'm all ready, and then nothing's working.
Yeah,
But I'm here now.
yes, this is something that I've learned recently. It's like nothing lets you do a live video from your laptop for some reason. There's probably Oh, I see somebody gave me a drum roll in the comments. Thank you. Yeah, I just recently learned that like for some reason you can't do live things from your laptop. So good to know. Everyone, please welcome Rachel Elizabeth. She is the author of Fairies in the Garden, which is yet another story in the Voices of the Future anthology. You can find a link to this lovely book in the description of this live. So, Rachel, what is the first thing you want people to know about you as an author?
I want people to know that I'm a Christian. I love Jesus, and I will never take them to a dark place and leave them there. I am huge advocate for hope in stories. And so when I take you to those broken places, I'm going to bring you back out and I'm never going to leave you without hope because I read when, life is hard and we need those reminders that the sun's going to rise again and something good is going to come out of that. So that's very important to me.
Yeah, that's great. And just interacting with you, that makes so much sense that that's your author brand and that that's the first thing that you want people to know about you as an author because that's who you are in person too.
Aw.
Um, our first previously sent in audience question is, in your opinion, what are the best and worst parts of writing?
Okay, so I'm different from you guys on this, where the idea stage is really hard for me. I think of like a scene or a character, but making it all work together into a cohesive story is really difficult. But once there are some, there's solid ground, I love drafting. Drafting is so much fun. I love to get into the characters, get into their voice, their emotions, and I enjoy editing too and making it all beautiful.
That's great. Maybe you can help us edit our stories.
You can
We'll
help me
we'll
with
come
my
up with
ideas.
yeah, we'll come up with the ideas and you can make them pretty. So, what is your story in the anthology Fairies in the Garden about?
It is about an old man who tends his garden with a meticulous hand in hopes of luring back the fairies who stole his daughter. But when he finally catches one, he finds out that convincing a fairy to bring his daughter back will be even harder than it was to catch her in the first place. And with his failing health, he's quickly running out of time.
Yes. And I think it was Sarah Grace asked earlier, what was your favorite part of writing this story?
Hmm, I think it was Mr. Sanders himself, just writing from his grumpy POV and giving him all of these cute little quirks and how he loves sweets. He loves chocolate. I'm like, so much fun to write.
Yeah, I figured you were probably going to say Mr. Sanders because how could you not? We love Mr. Sanders. It's fun that we have you and Kara on the same interview because you guys wrote the elderly protagonists that we have in Voices of the Future, and finding elderly protagonists in books at all is not that easy, especially written by younger people. So yeah, we love Banka, the little old lady, and Mr. Sanders, the little old man. They are both so great. What was your main inspiration for this story?
I'm not sure that there was really any. Someone had told me that when I was trying to write a short story, they said that we could experiment with our short stories and write something that we wouldn't write a full novel about. So then that got me to thinking, like, okay, so I really want to write from an old person's POV. I'm not sure why. I think I had read a short story or maybe a snippet from an elderly person's point of view. I'm like, that looks like a lot of fun. And I've never been able to make something magical work. So I'm like, fairies. And I usually write in a medieval setting, so I'm like, this can be more contemporary. That way I can have chocolate and all these fun things.
Yeah, that's great. Um, and who would you say this story is for? Who is your target audience?
This story is for people who want wholesome fantasy stories with a sense of wonder. It's for anyone who enjoys a heartwarming tale with a hint of whimsy, and I guess people who enjoy those family dynamics and oh, I just lost my words. It's a story of reconciliation and of hope, and anyone who wants to play around with a grumpy, well, protagonist.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Kara asked earlier, you normally write more YA books. So you kind of talked about this already, but what made you want to write a much older main character this time? Was there any other aspect of that you wanted to add?
Um, I don't think so. I wish I could remember because I think there was like a snippet from someone maybe on the conservatory that I saw that was from an elderly person's point of view. And it was just so new and different. I'm like, that looks so much fun. I really want to do this. And it, I don't, at least right now, I'm not sure if I'd be able to write a full length novel from an elderly person's point of view. So I'm like, gonna try it, have at it. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So how does your story fit into the family theme?
My story fits in because it's about a relationship between a father and his daughter. And he's also dealing with things that happened with his sister when he was younger. And it's just a story of reconciliation and being there for those whom you love, even when you don't know how to help them.
Yeah, for sure. What are some books or movies or songs or shows or other things that you would compare your story to help people be like, I'm a fan of this, so I'll be a fan of Fairies in the Garden?
I'm not sure. When you find it, I want to know. I definitely was thinking about the older Peter Pan tales when I wrote The Pixies and Dust by Kara Swanson because I wanted them to have that fun, spunky personality and be kind of ridiculous. So I guess Peter Pan, maybe Dust, or Tinkerbell movies.
Right, yeah. It did make me think of when I was a kid, I watched the Tinkerbell movies a lot. And so it made me think of that, except from this much more mature perspective, coming from, having an older man be the protagonist and just in general, like a more mature storytelling tone. Definitely Tinkerbell and Peter Pan came to mind for that. And there were some other fairy books that I read as a kid that I don't even remember what they were called, but it like reminded me of fairy books that I read as a kid but combined with the older protagonist perspective was really fun.
I love that.
Um, we have a question in the chat that is, what is your favorite part of your story?
Oh, um, I'm not sure if there's like a small favorite part. I like when Mr. Sanders interacts with the fairy that he caught and just trying to understand her and his thoughts about her. He's like, she's so irritating and stuff. And he's like, okay, she took that. I would have done something different, but who am I to judge? He's like taking orders from this tiny little pixie. I guess just their interactions, and even though she doesn't speak to him, they're still communicating.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of my favorite scenes too. I just felt like that was a very memorable, grounded scene that really stuck with me. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And yeah, and Kara asks, why did you choose fairies in particular?
I'm not sure. I wish I could remember and tell you. Um, I don't know, because the earliest thing I can remember about the concept is just that there was an old man, a garden, and fairies. I don't know. I don't know why. I was okay, so I'll give you a bit of backstory. In the conservatory, we get to bring 3 concepts to a critique hall. And I had 2 short story concepts and I needed a third. And I had nothing. And I was praying really hard. I'm like, God, I need another story. And 3 days before my critique call, I got this idea, and I wrote it, and that's the one that was chosen, and that became Fairies in the Garden. So it really was just like a last minute little gift from God. So there's not really anything that inspired that particularly for me.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of times the best stories do just like appear in your brain like that, and yeah, sometimes you have no idea where it came from, but it works. It feels right. So that's great. Um, and to go to a much easier question, she said sarcastically, how do you hope your writing will impact the future of storytelling? Or do you?
That is not the easy question. um, I hope my writing will inspire others with hope. I hope it will inspire them that we can tell true and honest stories without leaving our readers in dark places. That I hope it will inspire other writers to tell stories that help readers and give them light. I always want my stories to give readers something that they can take away when they close the book, and something that will help them when they face the battles in their own lives, and for them to be able to fight those with greater courage and dignity.
Yeah, that's great. I have one more previously sent in audience question for you. And while I ask that, if anybody else who's watching live has questions for Rachel, go ahead and ask them. You guys were very eager to ask questions for Rachel, so I know I asked ahead of time if you had questions, and some people did. A couple of you had questions while we were talking to Rachel, so if you've asked all your questions already, that's fine. But if you have any more, this is your last chance. Go ahead and put them in the chat. While I ask Rachel, what is next on your author journey?
For me, it's really similar to Hope. I will be right now. I'm working on a new novel, so I can pitch it to agents and publishers, and I will be looking for a literary agent and just growing my platform and continuing writing those stories so I have more in my back pocket.
Yep. And where can we find out more about you and your stories online?
You can find me on Instagram at Rachel Elizabeth Author. And I have a newsletter, which I cannot put in the chat because I don't have a YouTube channel, but I will give it to Jenny and she can put it in the description of the video.
Yep, I will have those links in the description of the video when I post the replay, and you guys can always look up Rachel right now if you want to do that. Rachel, do you have anything else that you want to share before I kick you out?
I just want to thank you for having me here and sorry about all of the tech issues. And thank everyone who came. Thank you so much, guys. You know, writers are nothing without readers, and we appreciate all of your support so much.
Yeah, such a good point. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Thank you for being here today, Rachel. I promise I did like having you here, even though I'm about to kick you out. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jenny.
Bye, Rachel. Okay, one more time. If you don't have your copy of Voices of the Future yet, and if you would like to support our storytelling journey, you can find a link to this in the description. Don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to my YouTube channel to see future videos, maybe future interviews with more anthology authors. We will see what happens. So, as Rachel said, thank you all for being here. Thank you for asking questions. It was great today, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye.